Somewhere in the world, right now, someone is in the last hour of their life. They don't know it. They might be lying in a hospital bed with their eyes half closed. They might be at home, in a quiet room, with someone they love holding their hand. They are not afraid. In most cases, by this point, they are not even fully aware. And here is the part almost nobody knows. Their body has already started. Long before the mind understands what is happening, the body begins a sequence so old it predates language, civilization, and almost every conscious thought a human has ever had. It is not chaos. It is not random. It is a process. A quiet, biological, almost choreographed sequence that the body performs in nearly the same way for nearly everyone, across nearly every culture on Earth. For most of human history, we had no idea what that sequence was. We invented gods to explain it. We built religions around it. We feared it in the dark. But in the last few decades, doctors, nurses, and neuroscientists have studied dying humans more closely than at any point in history. And what they found is not what you'd expect. Let's go inside the final hour. 60 minutes out, the first sign appears and it's almost invisible. The dying person goes quiet, not because they have nothing to say, but because the brain is beginning to pull energy away from systems it no longer needs. Speech is expensive, so speech fades first. The voice slows, the words thin out. Many people simply stop talking. It looks like weakness. It isn't. It's conservation. The body is rationing fuel for the one event it has been preparing for since the day it was born. Around the same time, the breathing changes. It becomes slow, then shallow, then strange. The person takes a few deep breaths, then stops for several seconds, then starts again. Doctors call this Cheney-Stokes breathing, and families almost always notice it because it sounds alarming. There are long pauses. The chest goes still, then a sudden gasp. It can be hard to watch. But here's what the science tells us, and what every hospice nurse will tell you. The dying person is not suffering through this. They are usually far below the surface of awareness by now, in a state closer to deep sleep than to wakefulness. The body is breathing on autopilot, running an ancient brainstem program that needs no conscious mind to operate. Then, often, comes a sound that has frightened humans for thousands of years. A wet, rattling breath. People used to call it the death rattle, and for centuries they believed it was the soul struggling to leave the body. It's not. It's simply saliva and fluid collecting in the throat because the person can no longer swallow or cough. It sounds distressing, but the person making it feels nothing. The reflex that would normally clear the throat has gone quiet along with everything else. There is one sense, though, that refuses to switch off. For decades, doctors assumed that as the body shut down, all the senses faded together. Sight goes early. Touch dulls. But in 2020, researchers at the University of British Columbia tested the hearing of dying patients in their final hours, measuring their brain's response to sound. What they found stunned even the people running the study. The dying brain was still responding to sound, still distinguishing one tone from another, even in patients who were completely unresponsive, who hadn't moved or spoken in hours. Hearing, it turns out, may be the very last sense to leave us. This is why hospice nurses tell families the same thing again and again. Keep talking. Say the things you need to say. Even if there's no response, even if the eyes are closed and the breathing has slowed, your voice may still be reaching someone on the other side of that silence. The last thing a dying person experiences may be the sound of someone who loves them, telling them it's all right to go. Now the body starts shutting down from the outside in. Blood is precious and the body knows it. So it begins pulling blood away from the hands and feet and skin and redirecting it inward toward the heart and the brain. The organs that matter most get fed last. This is why a dying person's hands and feet turn cool, then pale, then sometimes a faint blue or purple. The skin may become mottled, marked with patches like a slow tide pulling back from the shore. The body is triaging itself, choosing what to keep alive and for how long. The kidneys slow and then stop. The digestive system shuts down. There is no hunger now and no thirst, and this is not cruelty. It is mercy. A dying body that is denied food and water does not suffer the way a healthy one would. It has stopped asking. And then there is the brain. For a long time, scientists assumed the brain simply faded out at the end, like a radio losing signal. They were wrong. In 2013, researchers at the University of Michigan studied the brains of dying rats at the exact moment the heart stopped. They expected to see brain activity collapse into silence. Instead, in the 30 seconds after the heart stopped, they recorded a massive surge of organized electrical activity, a burst of high-frequency gamma waves, the same kind of brain waves linked to conscious awareness and intense focus. The dying brain didn't fade. It flared. It was more active in those final seconds, in some measures, than it had been while the animal was awake and alive. And then, in 2022, it happened in a human, by accident. An 87-year-old man was being monitored for seizures when he suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. The machine kept recording. And in the seconds around his death, his brain produced the same surge, the same gamma waves, the same signature linked to memory recall and dreaming. Right at the threshold, in the exact region of the brain that replays memories, his mind lit up. We can't know for certain what he experienced. We may never be able to. But the data hints at something extraordinary, something that lines up with what millions of people who have come back from the edge of death have described for as long as humans have been able to speak. A flood of memory, a sense of peace, a life playing back. The brain, in its final act, may turn inward and run through everything it has ever held. This may be the biological root of the phrase "your life flashes before your eyes." Not a myth, not a comforting story we tell ourselves, a real, measurable event happening in the one organ we understand the least. And this is where the science meets something older than science. Across every culture, in every century, the people who sit with the dying have noticed the same things. In the final hour, many dying people seem to look at something the rest of us can't see. They reach for the air. They speak to people who aren't in the room, often people who died long ago. A mother, a sibling, a spouse who passed years before. Hospice workers have documented this so many times they have a name for it. They call it the deathbed vision, and it is reported in cultures that have never met, that share no religion and no language. The skeptics say it is the dying brain misfiring, starved of oxygen, generating phantoms. They may be right, but here is what is harder to explain. The people who experience these visions are almost never afraid of them. They describe them as calm, as welcome, as a homecoming. Whatever is happening in that final hour, the body and the brain seem to be working together to make it gentle. And that may be the most surprising discovery of all. We spend our entire lives terrified of death. We organize religions around it, build philosophies to soften it, and lie awake at night feeling the cold edge of it. We are the only species on Earth that knows with full certainty that this hour is coming for us. But the hour itself, the actual final hour, appears to be one of the most peaceful processes the human body ever performs. The breathing slows. The pain signals fade. The body floods itself with its own chemistry. The brain pulls inward and, in its last moments, may give us back everything we ever loved all at once. The fear lives in the anticipation. The dread is in the waiting, the years of knowing it's out there. The thing itself, when it finally comes, is quiet. Your ancestors knew this in a way we have forgotten. For 300,000 years, humans died at home, surrounded by the people who knew them. Death was not hidden behind hospital doors. It was witnessed. Children saw it, families sat with it. It was woven into the fabric of being alive. We have spent the last century pushing death as far out of sight as we possibly can. And in doing so, we made it more frightening than it ever needed to be. Because the truth, the one the science is only now beginning to confirm, is that the body has been preparing for this moment since the day you were born. It knows exactly what to do. It has done it billions of times across the history of our species. And when it comes for you, you will not have to face it alone. And you will not have to figure it out. The oldest program inside you will simply begin, the same way it began for every human who ever lived. The same way it will begin for everyone who comes after. It is the one thing every single one of us will ever truly share. Human.